I'll read. Shall I read first?
That would be good. Just before you do, I just want to say that I'm thinking that because we're having so much connection here and talking and really helping each other with things, that once we've gone through the reading and discussion of the chapter, that we could stay online and maybe mastermind with each other. And that would be good in two ways, because first of all, we can focus on the book and get as much out of it as we possibly can. And then at the end, if people need to leave, or if people would like to stay and talk to each other, that would be a really good thing for everyone to be able to really connect and help each other. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Are you saying
cool, right?
Are you saying, I'm sorry, I just have a question. Are you saying after we discuss the chapter?
Yeah, so I'm thinking if we read the chapter and stay on task and discuss it specifically about the chapter, and then once that's complete, move on to a masterminding session.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea.
I might not be able to stay late. I got my son coming over for supper in an hour and a half, but I'll stay as long as I can.
All right. So, Lorraine, take it away.
Yeah. All right, Chapter 9, Persistence, the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. The 8th step toward riches. Persistence is an essential factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. Willpower and desire, when properly combined, make an irresistible pair. Men who accumulate great fortunes are generally known as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. Often they are misunderstood. What they have is willpower, which they mix with persistence and place back of their desires to ensure the attainment of their objectives. Henry Ford has generally been misunderstood to be ruthless and cold-blooded. This misconception grew out of Ford's habit of following through in all of his plans with persistence. The majority of people are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. A few carry on despite all opposition until they attain their goal. These few are the Fords, Carnegies, Rockefellers, and Edisons. There may be no heroic connotation to the word persistence, but the quality is to the character of man what carbon is to steel. The building of a fortune generally involves the application of the entire 13 factors of this philosophy. These principles must be understood. They must be applied with persistence by all who accumulate money. If you are following this book with the intention of applying the knowledge it conveys, your first test as to your persistence will come when you begin to follow the 6 steps described in the 2nd chapter. Unless you are one of the 2 out of every 100 who already have a definite goal at which you are aiming and a definite plan for its attainment, you may read the instructions and then pass on with your daily routine and never comply with those instructions. The author is checking you up at this point because lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. Moreover, experience with thousands of people has proved that the lack of persistence is a weakness common to the majority of men. It is a weakness which may be overcome by effort. The ease with which lack of persistence may be conquered will depend entirely upon the intensity of one's desire. The starting point of all achievement is desire. Keep this constantly in mind. Weak desires bring weak results. Just as a small amount of fire makes a small amount of heat, if you find yourself lacking in persistence, this weakness may be remedied by building a stronger fire under your desires. Continue to read through to the end, then go back to chapter 2 and start immediately to carry out the instructions given in connection with the 6 steps. The eagerness with which you follow these instructions will indicate clearly how much or how little you really desire to accumulate money. If you find that you are not yet indifferent, you may be sure that you have not yet acquired the money consciousness that you must possess before you can be sure of accumulating a fortune. Fortunes gravitate to men whose minds have been prepared to attract them, just as surely as water gravitates to the ocean. In this book may be found all the stimuli necessary to attune any normal mind to the vibrations which will attract the object of one's desires. If you find you are weak in persistence, Center your attention upon the instructions contained in the chapter on power. Surround yourself with a mastermind group, and through cooperative efforts of the members of this group, you can develop persistence. You will find instructions for the development of persistence in the chapters on autosuggestion and the subconscious mind. Follow the instructions outlined in these chapters until your habit nature hands over to your subconscious mind. A clear picture of the object of your desire. From that point on, you will not be handicapped by your lack of persistence. Your subconscious mind works continuously while you are awake and while you are asleep. How do you say this? Spasmodic or occasional effort to apply the rules will be of no value to you. To get results, you must apply all of the rules until their application becomes a fixed habit with you. In no other way can you develop the necessary money consciousness. Does anyone want to take over? I'm happy to continue.
I'll take over.
Okay.
Poverty is attracted to the one whose mind is favorable to it, as money is attracted to him whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract it, and through the same laws. Poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind which is not occupied with the money consciousness. A poverty consciousness develops without conscious application of habits favorable to it. The money consciousness must be created to order, unless one is born with such a consciousness. Catch the full significance of the statements in the preceding paragraph, and you will understand the importance of persistence in the accumulation of a fortune. Without persistence, you will be defeated even before you start. With persistence, you will win. If you have ever experienced a nightmare, you will realize the value of persistence. I had to kill the phone. You are lying in bed, half awake, with a feeling that you are about to smother. You are unable to turn over or to move a muscle. You realize that you must begin to regain control over your muscles. Through persistent effort of willpower, you finally manage to move the fingers of one hand. By continuing to move your fingers, you extend your control to the muscles of one arm until you can lift it. Then you gain control of the other arm in the same manner. You finally gain control over the muscles of one leg and then extend it to the other leg. Then, with one supreme effort of will, you regain complete control over your muscular system and snap out of your nightmare. The trick has been turned step by step. You may find it necessary to snap out of your mental inertia through a similar procedure, moving slowly at first, then increasing your speed until you gain complete control over your will. Be persistent, no matter how slowly you may at first have to move. With persistence will come success. If you select your mastermind group with care, you will have in it at least one person who will aid you in the development of persistence. Some men who have accumulated great fortunes did so because of necessity. They developed the habit of persistence because they were so closely driven by circumstances that they had to become persistent. There is no substitute for persistence. It cannot be supplanted by any other quality. Remember this, and it will hearten you in the beginning when the going may seem difficult and slow. Those who have cultivated the habit of persistence seem to enjoy insurance against failure. No matter how many times they are defeated, they finally arrive up toward the top of the ladder. Sometimes it appears that there is a hidden guide whose duty is to test men through all sorts of discouraging experience. Those who pick themselves up after defeat and keep on trying arrive, and the world cries, "Bravo! I knew you could do it." The hidden guide lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistence test. Those who can't take it simply do not make the grade. Those who can take it are bountifully rewarded for their persistence. They receive as their compensation whatever goal they are pursuing. That is not all. They receive something infinitely more important than material compensation, the knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Somebody else want to pick up?
I can take over it, Cheryl. There are exceptions to this rule. A few people know from experience the soundness of persistence. They are the ones who have not accepted defeat as being anything more than temporary. They are the ones whose desires are so persistently applied that defeat is finally changed into victory. We who stand on the sidelines of life see the overwhelmingly large number who go down in defeat, never to rise again. We see the few who take the punishment of defeat as an urge to greater effort. These, fortunately, never learn to accept life's reverse gear. Life's reverse gear. But what we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. If we speak of this power at all we can, If we speak of this power at all, we call it persistence, and let it go at that. One thing we all know, if one does not possess persistence, one does not achieve noteworthy success in any calling. As these lines are being written, I look up from my work and see before me, less than a block away, the great mysterious Broadway, the graveyard of dead hopes, and the front porch of opportunity. From all over the world, people have come to Broadway seeking fame, fortune, power, love, or whatever it is that human beings call success. Once in a great while, someone steps out from the long procession of seekers, and the world hears that another person has mastered Broadway. But Broadway is not easily nor quickly conquered. She acknowledges talent, recognizes genius, pays off in money only after one has refused to quit. Then we know he has discovered the secret of how to conquer Broadway. The secret is always inseparably attached to one word: persistence. The secret is told in the struggle of Fannie Hurst, whose persistence conquered the Great White Way. He came to New York in 1915 to conquer writing into riches. The conversion did not come quickly, but it came. For 4 years, Miss Hurst learned about the sidewalks of New York from first-hand experience. She spent her days laboring and her nights hoping. When hope grew dim, she did not say, "All right, Broadway, you win." She said, "Very well, Broadway, you may whip some, but not me. I'm going to force you to give up." One publisher, the Saturday Evening Post, sent her 36 rejection slips before she broke the ice and got a story across. The average writer, like the average in other walks of life, would have given up the job when the first rejection slip came. She pounded the pavements for 4 years to the tune of publishers' no, because she was determined to win. Then came the payoff. The spell had been broken. The unseen guide had tested Fannie Hurst, and she could take it. From that time on, publishers made a beaten path to her door. Money came so fast she hardly had time to count it. Then the moving picture men discovered her, and money came not in small change, but in floods. The moving picture rights to her latest novel, Great Laughter, brought $100,000, said to be the highest price ever paid for a story before publication. Her royalties from the sale of the book probably will run much more. Briefly, you have a description of what persistence is capable of achieving. Fannie Hurst is no exception. Wherever men and women accumulate great riches, you may be sure they first acquired persistence. Broadway will give any beggar a cup of coffee and a sandwich, but it demands persistence of those who go after the big stakes. Kate Smith will say amen when she reads this. For years she sang without money and without price for any microphone she could reach. Broadway said to her, "Come and get it if you can take it." She did take it until one happy day Broadway got tired and said, what's the use? You don't know when you're whipped. So name your price and go to work in earnest. Miss Smith named her price. It was plenty. Way up in figures so high that 1 week's salary is far more than most people make in a whole year. Verily, it pays to be persistent. Would somebody else like to read?
I'd like a turn. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
we can.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay. And here is an encouraging statement which carries with it a suggestion of great significance. Thousands of singers who excel Kate Smith are walking up and down Broadway looking for a break without success. Countless others have come and gone. Many of them sang well enough, but they failed to make the grade because they lacked the courage to keep on keeping on, until Broadway became tired of turning them away. Persistence is a state of mind, therefore it can be cultivated. Like all states of mind, persistence is based upon definite causes, among them definite purpose, definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step toward the development of persistence. A strong motive force, one to surmount many difficulties. B, desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of intense desire. C, self-reliance. Belief in one's ability to carry out a plan encourages one to follow the plan through with persistence. Self-reliance can be developed through the principle described in chapter on autosuggestion. D, definiteness of purpose. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. E, accurate knowledge. Knowledge that one's plans are sound, based upon experience or observation, encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. F, cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tend to develop persistence. G, willpower. The habit of concentrating one's thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of a definite purpose leads to persistence. H, persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds fear. The worst of all enemies can be effectively cured by forced repetition of acts of courage. Everyone who has seen active service in war knows this. Before leaving the subject of persistence, take inventory of yourself and determine in what particular, if any, you are lacking in the essential quality. Measure yourself courageously, point by point, and see how many of the 8 factors of persistence you lack. The analysis may lead to discoveries that will give you a new grip on yourself. The symptoms, would somebody else like a turn? I'm getting tongue-tied.
I'll go again if you like.
Okay.
Want me to go again?
Someone else
Yes.
like to read?
Wants to turn.
Go ahead, Lorraine, if you.
Okay. Symptoms of lack of persistence. Here you will find the real enemies which stand between you and noteworthy achievement. Here you will find not only the symptoms indicating weakness of persistence, but also the deeply seated subconscious causes of this weakness. Study the list carefully and face yourself squarely if you really wish to know who you are and what you are capable of doing. These are the weaknesses which must be mastered by all who accumulate riches. 1. Failure to recognize and to clearly define exactly what one wants. 2. Procrastination, with or without cause, usually backed up with a formidable array of alibis and excuses. 3. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. 4. Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing issues squarely, also backed by alibis. 5. The habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solution of problems. 6. Self-satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction, and no hope for those who suffer from it. 7. Indifference, usually reflected in one's readiness to compromise on all occasions, rather than meet opposition and fight it. 8. The habit of blaming others for one's mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being unavoidable. 9. Weakness of desire, due to neglecting the choice of motives that impel action. 10. Willingness, even eagerness, to quit at the first sign of defeat, based upon one or more of the 6 basic fears. 11. Lack of organized plans, placed in writing where they may be analyzed. 12. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. 13. Wishing instead of willing. 14. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches. General absence of ambition to be, to do, and to own. 15. Searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling, endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. 16. Fear of criticism, failure to create plans and to put them into action because of what other people will think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind, where its presence is not recognized. See the 6 basic fears in a later chapter. Let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism which may follow if they correct the mistake. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it does by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated educations after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of his personal ambitions and the right to live his own life in his own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear criticism, which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high, people will think you are crazy." When Andrew Carnegie suggested that I devote 20 years to the organization of a philosophy of individual achievement, my first impulse of thought was fear of what people might say. The suggestion set up a goal for me, far out of proportion to any I had ever conceived. As quick as a flash, my mind began to create alibis and excuses, all of them traceable to the inherent fear of criticism. Something inside of me said, "You can't do it. The job is too big and requires too much time. What will your relatives think of you? How will you earn a living? No one has ever organized a philosophy of success. What right have you to believe you can do it? Who are you anyway to aim so high? Remember your humble birth. What do you know about your philosophy? What do you know about philosophy? People will think you are crazy," and they did. Why hasn't some other person done this before now? These and many other questions flashed into my mind and demanded attention. It seemed as if the whole world had suddenly turned its attention to me with the purpose of ridiculing me into giving up all desire to carry out Mr. Carnegie's suggestion. I had a fine opportunity then and there to kill off all ambition before it gained control of me. Later in life, after having analysed thousands of people, I discovered that most ideas are stillborn and need the breath of life injected into them through definite plans of immediate action. The time to nurse an idea is at the time of its birth. Every minute it lives gives it a better chance of surviving. The fear of criticism is at the bottom of the destruction of most ideas which never reach the planning and action stage. Many people believe that material success is the result of favourable breaks. There is an element of ground for the belief, but those depending entirely upon luck are nearly always disappointed, because they overlook another important factor which must be present before one can be sure of success. It is the knowledge with which favourable breaks can be made to order. During the Depression, W.C. Fields, the comedian, lost all his money and found himself without income, without a job, and his means of earning a living, vaudeville, no longer existed. Moreover, he was past 60 when men considered themselves old. He was so eager to stage a comeback that he offered to work without pay in a new field, movies. In addition to his other troubles, he fell and injured his neck. To many, that would have been the place to give up and quit. But Fields was persistent. He knew that if he carried on, he would get the breaks sooner or later, and he did get them, but not by chance. Mary Dressler found herself down and out, with her money gone, with no job when she was about 60. She too went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence brought an astounding triumph later in life, long before the age when most men and women are done with ambition to achieve. Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 1929 stock crash, but he still had his persistence and his courage. With these, plus 2 prominent eyes, he exploited himself back into an income of $10,000 a week. Verily, if one has persistence, one can get along very well without many other qualities. The only break anyone can afford to rely upon is a self-made break. These come through the application of persistence. The starting point is definiteness of purpose. Examine the first 100 people you meet. Ask them what they want most in life, and 98 of them will not be able to tell you. If you press them for an answer, some will say security, many will say money, a few will say happiness, others will say fame and power, and still others will say social recognition, ease in living, ability to sing, dance, or write. But none of them will be able to define these terms or give the slightest indication of a plan by which they hope to attain these vaguely expressed wishes. Riches do not respond to wishes. They respond to definite plans backed by definite desires through constant persistence. I think we stop there, right?
Yep, that's where we're finishing up. So let's have a talk about this.
A lot of information there. Really a lot.
There is a lot.
Yeah, this is Tim. I've been through the Law of Success book 2 times on mastermind conference calls. We usually do 1 or 2 chapters a week. And this section on persistence, I found it helpful to look out other sources of Napoleon Hill's literature to get a slightly different read on the exact same material. So if you look at, say, the keys to success, that is some of Napoleon Hill's writings that's been taken and slightly altered by the Napoleon Hill Foundation, and it offers some very good summaries. Also, the Sharon Lechter books are very good. So I looked at Think and Grow Rich for Women today, and there was a couple of things that jumped out at me. Basically, they outlined the 8 factors that are instrumental, which are definiteness of purpose, desire, self-reliance, organized or definiteness of plans, accurate thought and knowledge, cooperation, willpower, and habit. So I can look at those factors and say, where in my life do I have deficiencies on those, and what do I really need to work on? So the definiteness of purpose and definiteness of purpose is basically clarity is essential. I have to have some motive that's bigger than myself. If I work through various life goal exercises, the passion chest, ask, there's a lot of different exercises to try and get clarity for what I really want in my life. what I found the most motivating is something that goes beyond me. It's not an automotive. It's not like a car, like a Ferrari. It's got to be something that serves the world around me, that people will benefit from beyond myself. That helps with the desire. It must be a very intense desire, and I have to have clarity. These 8 factors, they tend to build on themselves and feed on themselves. And if one is missing, it's going to impact the other 7. It's going to impact my ability to persist, which is a battle against obstacles. No matter what I'm striving towards, there's going to be considerations. There's going to be actual roadblocks. There's going to be my fears, and there's going to be my own shortcomings, which are obstacles. So those 3 elements are basically overriding obstacles, or you can call them considerations in striving towards what you want. If they're roadblocks, there's ways around them, or there's some other avenue you may take, or there's additional skills and tools that you need. This is really a great chapter. I really like this line, what he said. It was a fine opportunity to kill my ambition before it grabbed hold of me. What a great way to discuss fear, for instance. Or what a great way to stop and think about how nothing comes easy that's worthwhile. If you look at Colonel Sanders, he lived in his car. He was homeless, penniless, knocking on doors, trying to sell the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe, something like 1,100 no's while he was living in his car. And he finally got it. He finally figured out how to do it. Jack Canfield and Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul. That book is $1 billion plus enterprise. Over 500, 600 million books sold of chicken soup authors. They had 143 no's. What if they had quit at 143 rather than going for 144? How different the world would be. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call today. That's all I got.
I so agree with you. And, you know, when we think about their persistence and, you know, they kept knocking on the doors and they kept going at it, what we don't see, and I like that illustration of the iceberg, what we don't see is what was happening down underneath with them. They were persistent in keeping their motives clear and in front of them all of the time. They were persistent with keeping their desires strong and their faith in themselves and using autosuggestion and being persistent in applying all of these principles, which then allowed them to be persistent to go out and keep knocking on the doors.
Great point.
At the beginning of this chapter, again, it talks about developing a money consciousness. And I think I need a little bit more clarity on that, on how you go about doing that. And I'm not sure if there's more clarity on it in chapter 2 in the 6 steps. I don't think that's where it is. Does anybody have a clue on where there might be more on developing the money consciousness?
It's interspersed throughout the lessons in the Law of Success book, but there is one specific lesson on money consciousness in the Law of Success book, which you can find the initial copy in the public domain. There's a couple of different sources to find that, or I can, if you Facebook Timothy Snyder, message me or friend me, I'll send you the link or send you the actual copy, or see if I can forward it to Nicole and get it uploaded here.
Timothy, if you could share it in the Skype.
Great.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you could share that in our Skype group, I'm sure everyone would benefit from
That would be great.
Yes, I certainly can. The way I heard it described is, don't kid yourself and think you're going to give away $100 million when you're a billionaire, or you're going to be willing to give away $100,000 when you become a millionaire. If you've got $10 and you're not capable of giving away $1 right now, or not capable of saving away $1 with the $10 you have now. You're not going to do it when you have more. So the key lesson there is make a beginning with what you have. If you've got $10 in your pocket, put $1 in a piggy bank. If you've got $100, put $10 into a savings account, and then regularly look at that savings account. Let it see your eye, and it will feed on itself. And that habit will become the habit of saving, which is the lesson in the Law of Success book called The Habit of Saving. Is make a beginning with what you have to work with right now. As small as it is, it will grow. It affects our subconscious by taking action.
Okay, that's interesting.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Tim.
So I'm wondering, like at the beginning of this chapter, it said go back and read the 6 steps in chapter 2. And I'm wondering if we need to touch on that as a refresher.
So remember that was getting down on paper our goals and reading them morning and night. So being persistent in having them in front of you constantly,
Okay.
so that you're focused on those things. We can go back and have a look if you like.
Yeah, I was just going to say maybe we should just quickly refresh what the 6 steps were, so that reading this chapter is more beneficial.
So they're on page 40.
Page 40?
Would you like to read through them, Cheryl? They start at line 125.
Okay, just let me get to page 40 here. Well, now I went way past it. I'm just about there. Yikes. Okay. 125. Okay, so first, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. There's a psychological reason for definiteness, which will be described in a subsequent chapter. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There's no such reality as something for nothing. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess the money you desire. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire, name the time limit for its acquisition, state what you intend to give in return for the money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before retiring at night and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money.
So that was one of the very first steps that he asked us to do. So if we've already stopped doing that, we're not being very persistent. So it's a really good illustration for us to see where our persistence is at right now. And if we've stopped doing that, we need to go back there and get back onto it.
Exactly. Good point. Good point.
He talks a bit about desire here as well, and keeping our desire and using our imagination and thinking about our goals and what we want to contribute to this world and what we want for ourselves and our families is going to really help us to persist, because if we don't have any motives, there's no reason for us to keep moving forward, is there?
That's right. Okay. Well, I know myself, I have to go back and revisit that again. Things change.
I was just going to say, persistence is almost like discipline, And when you were talking about reading our daily our definite chief aim every day, and reading our self-confidence level every day. If you don't, just a second here. I just turned it on. I turned it off again.
Just while Maggie's sorting out her TV, I found it really interesting, the point at line 78. You know, your subconscious mind works continually while you're awake and while you're asleep. We all know that, but it just hit me this time, like, where 8 hours of every day, or a third of every day, it's doing what it's going to do. So I've only got the other, 2/3 of the time to train it to be working for me the way I want it to while I'm asleep. So being persistent with taking care of your limiting beliefs and your thought habits while you're awake is going to go a long way to making those 8 hours while you're asleep work to your benefit, rather than, what have you been watching on TV? Who have you been listening to? Are you switched into the news too much and seeing all the negativity around the world? You're listening to gossip? Are you talking about what ails you? Really think about how you're using your mind throughout the day, because while you're asleep, your mind's going to be carrying on with the things that you focus on most. So by being persistent with controlling our thoughts and taking control of what goes in, then we've got an extra 8 hours a day while we're asleep, where that's going to be carrying on at night time, rather than the hodgepodge of things that just get thrown in willy-nilly if we're not persistent with being careful about what we take in.
Hey, this is Maggie again. I am so sorry I got distracted here.
That's okay.
Life goes on as you're trying to do things, Yep. But anyway, discipline and what I was talking about was persistence and discipline. I think kind of really go hand in hand, even though there's, I think, a chapter on discipline, isn't there, in the Think and Grow Rich, or it's in one of the books. But and what you're just saying too is what you put into your mind at night. I mean, I figured this out. I mean, I have realized this, is that I used to watch TV at night before I went to bed just to calm my mind out. And I would have thoughts about that during the night. And now what I do is I just put on my headset and listen to something as I'm going to sleep. Maybe it's an affirmation. Maybe it's a recording of something that I've been wanting to listen to. But it's something positive that I can constantly do, and I'm finding myself that if I wake up in the middle of the night, those are the things that are going through my mind rather than the TV show that I was watching before.
Exactly.
So you're so right on. Yeah.
And it talks about cultivating a mind through habit, and that's the same thing. And it's talking here about a money consciousness, and it also applies to, health consciousness, and anything that you want to create in your life, you need to be focusing on thoughts that are conducive to that outcome, because if you're not having a money consciousness or a health consciousness. You're just having, is it even consciousness? I don't know. But you have to cultivate the habits of your mind. And the other point that he was talking about over here, where was it? Around line 124, I think. Some men who have accumulated great fortunes did so because of necessity. They've developed the habit of persistence because they were so closely driven by circumstances that they had to become persistent. And we've talked about burning bridges, and in one of the previous chapters they were talking about the literal boats that were burnt, and we went all into that topic. So these people have put themselves into that situation on purpose so that they have to become persistent. So if that's what you need to do to become persistent, maybe that's what you need to do.
Oh, this means that they purposely put themselves in that position. I didn't get that. That's interesting, Bob.
There's a possibility.
Well, some people have done that, and others just by force of will.
Yeah.
if you don't have the willpower, cutting off all escape puts you in a position where you either persist or die.
Right.
I heard described differently on a podcast, Timothy Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week. He does a lot of podcasts. He throws in a little too much profanity for my likes, but he has some great pointers. And what he called it was the Odysseus contract. During the Odyssey, Odysseus knew that he had to face the sirens, and he knew that everyone before him that tried to listen to the sirens and survive could not do it. He wanted to put himself to the test to experience it, so he had his men tie him to the mast before they covered their ears and sailed through the area where the sirens caused all the shipwrecks. An Odysseus contract that we make with ourselves. Little psychological game. Thanks.
Mm.
Hi, this is Arvin, and I also agree, and I also wanted to say that there's another way of looking at it too, and that is, what if it's the ego that making you not burn those ships and still keep those bridges, because there's always that belief that what if things go wrong, and until the time that you have that, people can sense that. Unless those are your clients or business partners, they can easily, it comes across as not being very confident in what you're doing. So there's another point to it too, and that is just apart from the persistent, it is also just how you feel about your work, because you probably would be okay burning the ships if you knew you're gonna achieve what you're achieving.
Yeah, that's right. And you would have to use your persistence in increasing your self-belief. So you would identify what it is that's holding you back, and then you would use your persistence to use your auto-suggestions and getting your belief system up there so that you can then move forward with being more deliberate and more decisive in what you intend to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just the power of faith and just that beliefs around whether you can achieve it or not. And I think the work we do on a daily basis is to develop those habits so we can have that confidence to believe in what we want to achieve, and by visualizing and reading about it and thinking about it. So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and again, it seems like everything tends to always point back to your desire. That it's much easier to cultivate persistence and willpower and make decisions if you have a strong desire. It always seems to kind of point back to that. And definiteness of purpose.
Yeah. And what does everyone think about in line 61, 160? What we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. Do you think that he's just referring to persistence?
Yeah, I was looking at that line and I'm not sure I understand it.
It seems like a result.
Could you repeat that line again?
Sure. But what we do not see, what most of us never suspect of existing, is the silent but irresistible power, and powers in capitals, which comes to the rescue of those who fight on in the face of discouragement. And then he goes on to say, if we speak of this power at all, we call it persistence and let it go at that.
My gut feeling is he's speaking of something much broader than just persistence, bigger than just the 8 factors that consider when trying to build our persistence. In some respects, he could be speaking of the power that results from a mastermind. He could also be speaking of the power of our conscious plus the subconscious equals the superconscious, which is all the powers of the universe once our definite major purpose is in line and those vibrational thoughts are sent out in tune, the universe shows up to help us at just the right time.
That's what I was kind of thinking. And I studied the Bible quite deeply many years ago, and I can't remember the wording of the scripture, but I do remember it saying something like, those who really persist in prayer, who really show by their persistence that they really, really want it, then the prayers are answered. You know, you can't just throw a prayer out there and expect it. You've really got to persist in the prayer to like prove that that's really what you want. And when I read that, I thought, I think that's referring to the similar thing. Once you've persisted in something for so long and proven, yeah, okay, the universe says, okay, yes, you do really want it. Now I'm going to put my invisible hand in and help you.
Yeah, that seems to draw a simile to the examples that he gave us about the people on Broadway, or the lady, or especially like the Smith lady that sang for nothing, and then Broadway finally gave in and said, okay, I get it, you're not going to give in, so here it is.
Yeah, and aren't we like that with our children? We take them to the shop, they want everything they see. But if they've been talking about something in general conversation for over a period of time, you know, they want a particular sporting piece of equipment, you know, they have a genuine interest in it. It might be really expensive, and if they just saw it on the shelf, they wouldn't get it. But if they've been persistent about really wanting it, and you know it's something they really want, you will go and get that for your child because you want your child to be happy. And I feel like our feelings towards our children are very similar to the universe's or infinite intelligence's feelings towards us as part of it. And I think that that is what the type of thing that it's referring to there.
Yeah, I listened to that line, and I think of people who run marathons, and they hit the wall at like about 20 miles in, and you've got another 6 to go. And how many people just drop out at the 20 miles? Those who get, make it the next mile or so, all of a sudden they get the second wind, and like they regain their strength. That's what I'm looking at this as.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. I have never done it, but I've heard of that.
Hey, look, my idea of a marathon is going up and down the stairs to get my coffee.
That's why I do the salsa dancing. It's like well, you know what, you guys, there's at the beginning of the chapter 2, this is something that I wrote down because it's something that I keep having, it keeps bothering me, and I'm reading different materials and getting different messages, and some of it is things that we've all read together, like Genevieve Durand and in the science, I guess, in the Science of Getting Rich as well. In here, Napoleon talks so much about having a plan. And and then other places I read where it says, just know what you want and you don't have to know how you're going to get it. And I'm going, those are contradictory to me. And I feel
but think about this, though. Okay, Napoleon Hill does say the plan doesn't have to be perfect. Okay?
Okay.
If you have your goal and you develop a plan, if the plan doesn't work, you simply develop another plan. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's really the power of intention. One training thing I had gone to years ago, it was they had a formula. I think it was M plus I equal R. Okay, method plus intention equals results. And so the question is, okay, assuming that result is 100, 100%, okay, what are the values of method and intent?
Okay. Yeah.
And the answer to that is intent is 100.
Okay.
And the reason being, you can get, as long as you keep that intention of reaching that goal, you'll find a way of getting there. Okay? Edison, with the light bulb, 10,000 attempts before he succeeded in discovering how to make a light bulb. And when he was asked I think it was by Hill, in fact, one of the things was, well, if you hadn't discovered the light bulb, what would you be doing? And and Edison said to Hill, I sure as hell wouldn't be sitting here having coffee with you. I'd be in the lab trying to figure out how to make the light bulb. Mm-hmm. And when asked about the 10,000 times specifically, he said, well, it wasn't 10,000 failures. It was simply 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I really like that formula. I think that's going to give me.
I think also you were kind of hinting that there's these two contrasting views. If you read them as absolutes, mm-hmm. have a definite plan versus set your goal intentions out there and let the universe guide you. Say those are two extremes of the spectrum. Yes. But they're not absolutes, meaning that you take a dream, and if you make that dream into how much, exactly how much, and by what date, then that becomes a goal. But you need the how much and the by what date to get it to be a goal. So you've got your definite major purpose, which comes kind of from your mission in life, and you get your DMP. Then you break your DMP down into various goals. And then within those goals, you look at, say, these 8 factors which comprise persistence, and check those against each goal. Then each goal, you're going to get various strategies. Then you can break those down into tactics. Then you can take something like Nicole's daily schedule worksheet that she uploaded. That is excellent, Nicole. Then you can utilize those tools to take the tactics into some definite steps to take every single day. But the element that says, let the universe decide for you how to find your goals, is simply saying, don't rigidly hold on to the exact details of your goals, strategies, and tactics and your daily to-do list. That it's often just not going to work out the way we plan. The benefit of a plan, whether it's a detailed business plan, is not that it's expected to be exact. It's expected to be wrong in most regards, actually. But it's how we grow what we learn in the process of doing that detailed plan. Thanks.
Yeah, and the plan may not be, you may not be able to have a hugely detailed plan yet. You might only know the next 2 steps. But if you don't put them in action, you're showing that you don't have faith in either yourself or your desire or your purpose. So even if you can't put down on paper a huge plan, just do work with what you've got now and take those couple of steps, and know that once those steps are taken, the next part will be revealed to you. Right. And so but you do need to have something in place to be able to take the first step. Because if you don't start taking action, you're showing that you don't have faith in your purpose or yourself. So, you know, even though you don't have a huge plan written down, you might have the first 1 or 2 steps.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, hey, where was this daily worksheet
that will be in the files system? That was really early on, so it's probably right down the bottom.
Okay.
And it was basically the things that on the seminar we were recommended to do. So your daily reading the formula,
yes,
self-confidence formula, you know, all of those things that we were recommended to do each day, your gratitude list.
Great, okay. The
To
daily
help.
reminder, write down the gratitude, be quiet for 5 minutes, send love to yourself and others, read self-confidence, affirmations, that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
training your mind to work the way you want it to.
Okay.
And also, I just want to say with that list, don't get too caught up in dogmatic routines. That can happen as well if you don't really mean it, and don't just do it by route, you know, like the Lord's Prayer. And I don't want to probably go any further in the conversation because some people may have different beliefs there, but it's not meant to be said by route. It's meant as a guide for a prayer with feeling. So do all of those things with purpose and feeling as ideas to keep your mind in check.
Can I ask what everybody? I mean, I'm happy with the plan. I'm happy putting a plan together. I struggle with a date. I struggle committing to a date because I've put dates, and it's like maybe I'm a little bit over ambitious, which makes me then second guess myself. It feels like whenever I'm writing, if I put a date, I get this nagging thought in my head, and it just becomes about the date so I've stopped writing dates, or having a plan for a specific date. And that doesn't mean I'm just throwing it up in the air and hoping. I kind of have a vague idea that I'd like it to happen by this time, but something about putting a date, and I guess it's the fear of missing the date. Here we go with fear. Maybe it's the fear of missing the date, or maybe it's the fear of the pressure because I've got to do something by then. I don't know what it is, but having a date, I don't feel that really. I don't like that bit.
Well, if you don't have a date,
it for the sake of it.
Yeah, Lorraine, if you don't have a date, then it's like, well, someday I'd like to have. That's really a wish.
Yeah, I get that.
So the idea of a date isn't, well, by January 1, I will have, or I will have failed. That's not the thing. A goal has to be definite. Okay? So it's not only what, it's when. Now, as you get closer to your goal date, you may find that it's not going to be exact. I mean, think about it this way, okay? Especially for all of you women in the group who have had children, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you a due date, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just say it's September 1st, for the sake of argument. Okay, well, you get to September 1st, and it doesn't happen. Did you fail?
No.
No, okay, it was a guess. Okay, it was the best guess that the doctor had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you know, so you have to look at this thing as, okay, I know that if I plant a particular vegetable, a seed for a particular vegetable, it will grow in, let's say, 60 days. Now, it might be 59, it might be 61, but 60 days is the typical thing. Well, how long does it take for an idea to grow to fruition? You don't know. Okay? You can only guess at it. But if you don't have a date in mind, your plans are going to be, well, gee, it would be nice if I made that date, but if I don't, who cares?
Yeah, wishy-washy.
Okay,
Yeah.
so like I said, it becomes a wish, not a desire. Okay, it's not. It's no longer a goal. It's a wish.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess there's probably more to do with the fact that there's perhaps a reason I need to explore as to why I'm afraid to write it down, because I totally get that. I get it. And I have put dates. I mean, and this is just plucking it. This is not what I'm writing. But, if I said I wanted £1 million by next week, Thursday, and I truly don't believe I'm going to get that, then it's kind of pointless writing that. But actually, is the thought that's just gone through my head. But actually, if I'm going to have a definite plan for acquiring that by next week, Thursday, well, who knows? So,
well, I mean, look at that preacher.
Yeah, I just recalled that what we studied 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks
exactly.
ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. He said, okay, I want it. I'm going to get it. And he's preaching on, what am I going to do if I had $1 million? Okay. Well, that was his plan then to do the preaching. Okay. Now, he had a goal of getting that money immediately. Okay. Well, what happens if he got only $750,000 that first week? Okay. Well, he didn't make his goal, but he came damn close. So maybe he extends it by another week.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, he'll hardly think he failed, will he?
Exactly. Well, he didn't meet his goal. Okay, so some could consider that a failure.
No. But, I get it.
Okay. So put the date down. I mean, don't be, and don't turn around and say, well, I'm going to have $1 million in the next
tomorrow.
Okay. Because that is totally unrealistic. Okay. Because there's, but.
No, I don't want to fool myself like that. I do really want to work towards something. I just do. But yeah.
Right. So for the sake of argument, let's say like Callie, I think wants to write a book, if I remember correctly. Okay. Well, writing a book doesn't happen in a week. Okay. It might take, say, 2 months to write the book. For the sake, I'm just throwing on date, time. Okay. So let's say it's going to take 2 months to write the book. And it's also going to take a little bit of time to get it through publishing or into Amazon or whatever, however you're going to do it. Okay. Well, now you have the book. It's out there in, let's say, 3 months from now. Okay. But your goal was to get $1 million in royalties from the book. Okay. Well, I got the book written and it's out there on Amazon, but now I have to go out and tell people it's there.
Promote it.
Okay? And I'm not going to get, let's say, 1 million sales, so assuming $1 per sale is what you're going to get out of it. I'm not going to get 1 million sales in a week. I might if I get really lucky or if I'm really skillful in marketing the book. But it might be that you'll get the 1 million sales over the span of 6 months.
But I guess in that stage, at that point, it's work in progress. Now the date doesn't even matter so much because you can see so much is happening towards it that you can be excited. So I suppose that's a factor too, isn't it?
So at that point, you break this thing into basically, for the sake of argument, 3 one-step goals. step number 1 is completing the writing of the book.
Yeah.
Okay, and the estimate for that is, let's say, 2 months. And again, I'm just throwing out some time.
Sure.
Okay. Step number 2 is getting it all set and into Amazon for sale. Okay, getting it published. Let's say that's another month. Okay, and then step number 3 is selling 1 million copies of this.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you break it down that way, you have 3 definite goals that you can put times on. Okay, now you may or may not get the 1 million in sales. But at least the first shot. Look at Fannie Hurst. It was like how many years? 4 years of of writing books and trying to get them published. Okay,
Yeah.
but if you have the goal of completing the book by a certain date, okay, you may make that date, you might miss it by a week or 2. I don't know. Okay, doing all the work toward getting it published, that's another piece of time. All right. So those are, tangible goals. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. That sounds to me like somebody had put something in the group. There was a triangle. God, bear with me, guys. There was a triangle, and it was desire, plans, and then, because obviously as things move, using your example of the book, if I had a date that I'd have 1 million by September, just the fact that my book is on Amazon and that's going to fuel my desire, the date just doesn't really, I don't care if it I'm not going to get it till December. That doesn't matter, because I can see that it's happening. It's happening. I'm on my way. I'm being fueled. My desire is being fueled. I'm taking more action. More things are happening. So yeah, I guess that's, when you get to that point, all right. So, okay, I will now be writing this. I will.
Help me. I thank you so much. This is Helena. About 2 weeks ago, I was demanding for something to happen, and with actions, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. So I said to myself, maybe I was too rough. Maybe I was not thinking, the process you gave us about the example of the book. But I got discouraged. So a week after that, I said, okay, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to believe it. But I like that triangle, because when you see some results happening, then that increases your faith.
Sure.
But when you don't see anything, it's kind of like, okay, I can do this. But so the whole thing, this conversation really helped me. So I thank you so much.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
And I always like to go back to the funny example, if you will. I mean, if 9 women get together and demand that they'll have a baby in 1 month, because there's 9 of them, that's not going to work either, right? Okay. So, I mean, the demand has to be somewhat reasonable.
Sure.
Miracles do happen, but
I'm not there yet.
And
another way to think about goals is also. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and I'm only a man, so what do I know?
Strap a bowling ball to your bladder. The other element about goals, you can think of them as end goals and means goals, meaning our definite desire, our definite major purpose and end goal. But there's a lot of means goals in the process. And we don't always know what the means goals are going to be when we set the end goals. So, for instance, just right now, there's a learning process that you just witnessed. In talking about fears, we chatted about some stuff indirectly, and suddenly you asked yourself the key question was, I guess I should explore why I have this fear about the date, about setting a specific date. And that's growth in the process. It's part of the learning curve. It's going to change it's an end goal that we didn't even expect that we needed. And we couldn't have possibly planned without beginning. Just simply to say, I need to explore myself and do some inner work to find out, why am I afraid of that date? Am I afraid of succeeding and the responsibility that comes from achieving it by that date? Or am I afraid of putting the date too close? Or am I afraid of building in too much slack and room for error, fudge factor, and adding too much time to the date? So
I'd like to add to that about, if it's not quite the date, is to look at the action steps that is required leading up to that date, and to define, what is it going to take? What is, if there's some kind of a obstacle or distraction, and then evaluate that based on that, because just coming up with any date, it's not any good if the precursor of, setting other little action steps leading up to that point, and to really become clear about, what amount of time is it going to require here? Do I need extra time? What is it going to take? When would I be able to fit that in? And what can also be my reward that I would give to myself for doing that? Because it's a way, we need to nurture ourselves as well, give ourselves a reward. It can be, is that an incentive? Would having an incentive, would that be a value to you? Would it be a contribution? So what would be a contribution to my fulfilling this? There's even now, even for writers, there's people who like to write quickly or organize ways, get people to be able to write a book in a weekend. So there's all these different variations of stuff, but nonetheless, regardless of how long it takes, there are many different kind of steps and things, that take place even while you get started in writing a book, for example. So it's all the little small steps that have to be taken into consideration too. So as to look at it little, what the steps require, so as to not get overwhelmed by the bigger, date of having it done by. But if otherwise, if you have that set date and you've already started on your little action steps of what you're going to be doing leading up to that date, then, that's what's going to be a contribution of reducing or eliminating the overwhelm.
Good point.
And just remember that the date can always be adjusted.
Yeah.
All right. So if you find that instead of taking 2 months to write the book, it takes you 3 months. Okay, so you pushed out the date of your goal, your final goal by 1 month. You can adjust it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And even if it takes a year, it still reeled it in a long way from someday.
And just remember Earl Nightingale's definition of success. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Okay, so if you have the goal as your, I'll say, definition of what you have to accomplish to be successful, and I'm just throwing this thing out. Okay, as long as you're making steady progress toward that goal, you are successful. Okay.
Yeah, I get that.
Thank you for sharing, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we could always take and readjust and redefine what that date's going to be if it turns out that we need more time. It's just that having that, you know, like that set goal anyway. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you know, if you're dealing with like a group of people who are, you know, you're in a company and you have a project with a due date. Okay, well, maybe what I need is 3 more people working on this project in order to make that date. So it might just be that you either have to increase. I mean, here, if you consider writing the book, okay, well, if I spend an hour a day writing the book, I'll complete the book in 60 days. So that's 60 hours of writing. Okay, well, I'm halfway, you know, I'm 30 days in and I haven't completed half of the book yet. So maybe I have to go and devote not 1 hour a day, but maybe 2 hours a day to finish to writing the book.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember from Science and Grow Rich, he had said, however, to take effective actions, not to overwork or to rush. And I have this tendency of overworking. So, because overworking is look like you're forcing it.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's
And there's a difference between working hard and working smart. Okay?
Yeah.
Anybody ever tried to, you know, okay, I'll use the example of, you know, cutting down a tree. Okay? Well, you can take, you know, a small tree or and use a sledgehammer and keep pounding away at the tree, and eventually the tree will come down. Or you can take a power saw and cut it down in about 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay? So when you're, you know, working, yes, you don't want to work too hard. You want to work smart.
That's right. It's one of my paradigms. So it's in I'm working smarter every day.
I like that statement. I am working smarter every day.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example in my life. Okay, I'm in IT, and there have been many times that we're basically developing something as a proof of concept. Okay, can this thing work? And I'll look at what I need to do to build something in order to test out my the theories or whatever. And I'll start building it, and as I'm building it, also automating the process in case I have to do it a second time. And I can't tell you how many times the people I work for said, "What the hell are you doing that for?" Well, sure enough, I had to do it a second or a third time. So the second and third time, it took me maybe a half an hour instead of 3 weeks. That's working smart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you.
And when you're really tuned into what you want to, you'll find the ideas starting to pop up, and your plans might change as you go along, and you really need to be receptive to those ideas that are popping up, because they may not be your own. They may be from a higher source which is guiding you to a better way to do things. So being receptive to hunches that come along and acting on them immediately is really important too. And even if it changes your plan, it's probably a good thing, because it'll probably be a better plan.
Yeah, and also as you're consciously thinking about something, okay, like thoughts or things that are similar to that will appear for you. I mean, you ever consider you're looking at, you're going to buy a new car, and you're thinking about the kind of car that you want to buy, and all of a sudden you start seeing that same car on the road where you never saw them before. They were always there. You just didn't see them because you weren't thinking about them.
Right.
Mm.
And number 12 is one of the symptoms of lack of persistence is the habit of neglecting to move on ideas. So if you're tuned in as much as you can be persistently thinking about your motives and your desire and your outcomes and your plans and your purpose, then these ideas are going to be popping up into your mind constantly, especially while you're asleep or first thing in the morning. And if you're neglecting them, then you're really putting roadblocks in front of yourself.
Very good.
I think this is really, this chapter is really taken me to another step, realizing that I have to design my plan a little bit more definitely, and especially with dates. So I think it'll help to move into action a little bit more.
And I'd like to add, for me personally, I think I have got plans and they're huge, but not having this date, like I can see as a result of this conversation, like Bill has just said, and Nicole, things are coming up because I'm thinking about the plan all the time. There's no date, but I am thinking about, my goals and my plans all the time. So things are coming up that would make my plans possible, or I'm seeing things that I could act on. But given that I don't have the confines of a specific date, I've got time to do that soon. Do you know what I mean? So it's there, like, oh, that would be a good thing to do, because that would help towards my get around point. That's what not having. There's no sense of I'm going to do this right now and work towards it because it's towards that date. It's not recognized. That's just been a bit of a eureka moment for me, because things are happening, and I'm writing them down, as in when I'm ready, but not having a date is meaning I'm not necessarily walking with purpose directly towards it. I can see things, but I'm not putting them all together like I should be. So great, thank you everyone.
That's why I really liked what Kelly said about breaking it down into smaller chunks so that you take the pressure off, because you may not know exactly how you're going to make this big, huge thing happen. But you may know the next few things, and you might be able to put a date on those few things as well. And while you're doing those things and progressing and thinking about those things and focusing on those things, the ideas for the next things are going to start popping up like you're experiencing already.
Mm-hmm. And something else that Bob Proctor always talks about as a goal is not something you get. It's a goal is something you grow into. And so also the definition of success is a progressive realization of an ideal. So it's all about just growing into that. And of course, in what Bill was saying and everybody else, just changing. I mean, that date is just kind of is there for you to have something as a target, and of course it's probably going to change. Your plans are going to change, but you're growing. And that's what we have to keep remembering. We're always growing into something. So, great discussion here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Because when we get there, then we're going to say, what now?
Yeah.
It is all about the growing.
That's really a good point. I've been feeling like, I've been being directed to do things a little bit differently than I had originally thought to do. Like, I originally at one point thought, well, I need just to get a book written, get started in that. And now I've come to realize that, and also my bigger goal is to make a different kind of a transition to be in contributing to helping me to have get financial independence. And so I've taken a step now looking at, well, how can I turn my circumstances and things into an asset, not only what my gifts are, but also my living situations and circumstances. And I'm now looking at exploring ways that I could maybe put myself in a position, kind of like what somebody said before, put myself in a circumstantial position where like I'm like maybe mentoring for some parents, for children that, you know, with some certain kind of needs that I have some things that I have a little bit of expertise in being able to be innovative in creating alternative solutions that I want to be able to use that as a way of, to be able to develop something so that I can have like a toolkit that I can create for parents and things like that. So it's kind of getting from that how did I get to where I am with the gifts things that I've accomplished, so that I can use that as a leverage to be able to help other people. But so the book idea isn't at the forefront, even though it's important for me to be writing. But I'm finding now that, maybe doing something like this, where I'm mentoring and getting involved in an organization to be able to get connected with the right kind of audience and the people, so that I can start to build myself a platform. I can start to be able to have, opportunities or create opportunities to be like a keynote speaker or something. So it's all bringing back to me, kind of putting me back to another aspect of growing into some other goals here. I'm like, oh, wow, what a concept, when I look at it now, but it's like, where am I going to go from here now? It's what I have to look at in a different way now.
That was fantastic, Callie.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
It's funny because from one person to another person, we're all different. So for me, I'm like a doer. I create lists. I got to do this and I got to do that. And next thing you know, I feel somewhat disappointed if I don't reach my actions. But I have been, putting when I'm learning into practice. And I have to say, in the last 2 weeks, I am more present. I'm not so much into doing. And so even just like last night, I was having a issue with a platform, anyways, technical issues. And usually I would stay up until it would be completed. So if it would take me hours, I would just take hours to do it. Well, last night I said, I am going to stop. I'm going to read. I'm going to relax, and going for a walk with my dogs, and then we'll go to bed, and I will deal with it tomorrow morning, which was this morning. And then what is so funny is I visualize that this morning it was not going to take me a long time to complete what I wanted to complete yesterday. And sure enough, it didn't take me a long time. And I didn't put too much effort into visualizing. I just said, I will do it tomorrow morning and it's going to be easy and it will be done. And so yes, it did happen.
Because overnight your subconscious went to work and figured out what needed to be done and how.
Yeah, sometimes the best thing you can do is go to sleep.
What a good example, Elena. What a great example.
That's my ideal job, a mattress tester.
I'd like to thank everyone for their persistence in sticking with this group, especially in the early days when we had so many technical issues. Bill brainstormed with me a lot trying to sort things out, and Callie and quite a few others of you that have been here since day one, and that really took a lot of persistence.
I joined when everything was smooth. So thanks, everybody.
Persistence pays off.
And Vlad saved the day several times in the early days. Thank you, Vlad.
You're welcome.
It's funny because when that happened, when we had lots of problem with Skype, I kept telling myself, wow, that Nicole is really patient.
You know, it really brought some terrific opportunities for some of us to get to know each other better, and I'm really thankful for that.
Likewise.
Yes. It's always.
I feel that I'm getting more and more out of the sessions all the time, because and I don't know if that's typically what happens in a mastermind group as the people get more comfortable with each other, but I really find that it's just growing. Oh, and I gotta go. My son's here.
Aww. Right.
Okay, well, goodbye, you guys, and I'll talk to you next Saturday. Have a good one.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. The discussion today really is helping me, to be honest.
Good to hear, Julie.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everyone. If you'd like to stay and talk a bit longer, that's great. I'm going to stop the recording now for the book study, and I thank everybody very much for their input. It's been a really great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.